Recording started.
Okay, hello everyone. All right, so Shannon is there. Anyone else? Erin? And that's just about it. Okay, guys, I understand you don't have mics. So could we begin with your questions? I was thinking of starting today assignment 2, but I feel that we're very close to assignment 1 submission, and I'm not sure whether it wouldn't be helpful to actually clarify some things before you begin submitting. If you can ask some questions or type them if you don't have a mic, then I might just for a second just check whether we have, and you can check too because I'm sharing screen. I might check whether we have some submissions already. So discussion board, I've been pretty good on the discussion board, so I have made comments. So we have 3 assignments already, so that's great. Erin, if I didn't reply, then it got lost. I am very sorry. I had been really extremely busy. I haven't moved for the last 2-3 days for different reasons, for 2 days, and another reason for Friday. So if you could resend it to me, that would be great, or you can ask me a question online. Regarding any extensions, I just wanted to say, regarding any extensions, I'm very easy with extensions. I mean, we have lots of students who are married, they have children, they teach at the same time, they work. So I'm very easy with assignments and so on. It is best if you submit your assignment within, say, 2 weeks of its deadline, because assignment 2 is likely to grow on assignment 1. Now, you can put it on paper. Every one of you who really finds yourself in a, low and a lot of assignments to do, the final deadline for assignments is 15th of June. So if you cannot submit assignment 1 within the current time, I want to see both assignments really the latest by 15th of June. The reason for it is just wait, Shannon, I will respond. Thank you so much. So the reason for it is that I need the last assignments by 15th of June is that I have to submit grades by 20th or so. So in order for me to even assess your work, I need a couple of days. I'm very, very good at it, but I just don't know what my commitments will be around that time. So 15th of June, I would like to see assignments of students who literally can hardly breathe and they send them late. Now, the good thing is that if you submit an assignment late, I am not obliged to send you feedback, which means I assess and you have no idea why you got the grade you got. So for me, it's easy. For you, it's like throwing assignment into a cave, right? And into a well, and you have no idea what happened to it. So that's it. So basically, it is in writing, 15th of June. There will be all assignments that are submitted late will not have feedback. So say, for example, I don't know when this assignment is due, but say, let's assume that in a week's time, if you don't submit within, say, 5 days after the deadline, the likelihood that you will get no feedback is high. I would try to give feedback to almost everyone on assignment one, even late submissions. But again, what happens when we are academics, my life, as you can see, Erin, now, is terrible. You know, Thursday comes, I have to do things. Friday comes, I have to do things. Saturday, Sunday, I had to work all day, both days. And it just goes on. I'm just stunned how it happens. So, so if I designate a particular time for assignments and they're not there, then I can't actually find time on the 25th of May, because students submitted really late assignment one, to assess those and start being and continue being active on the discussion board. And you know, it's just not possible. So if you submit your assignment one relatively late, like 15th of June or 20th of May, the likelihood that you will get feedback is very low. So the history, when we do the history, so your history in literacy. So we've spoken about it, Shannon, but we can talk about it again. And that's why I want to talk about assignment one a little bit, because there are little pieces of information that always get lost. So Shannon, can you actually tell me what idea you have, or will it be probably faster if I tell? So what's literacy? You have to discuss your history in literacy. So there are two aspects to it. I just hope that they are explained in the assignment description, but if not, you basically are invited to discuss, or requested actually, to discuss the concept of literacy and everything that you have written about what literacy is, right? And then you integrate that and compare with how your experiences in learning literacy skills was when you were a child or a student. Another one is to, if you don't want to do that, what I suggest to students is to take everything that you have written about what literacy is and what really matters to the concept of literacy, and then have a look what's happening on your prac, how people teach literacy, and you can evaluate what you've written in relation to how people do it today on the basis of your experiences in school. Right, so your experiences in schools today, or maybe your experiences of your children in schools today, something like that. Yeah, great. So I looked at some students' assignments, and some of you write a lot about what literacy is, and that's really important. But just on a side, I wanted to say what really matters in an academic text is that you actually identify the key aspects of literacy, and everything else are implications. Right? It's always like that. The key aspect of marriage is whatever you agree with your husband. We have an open marriage and you can do whatever you want, and from this follows. Or we have a one-on-one relationship, right? And things follow. Like, you know, we talk to each other all the time about what we're doing together and separately. And we can, because it's only you and me. When we have 300 other people in our marriage, there's no time for that. So the key principles, the key features of what literacy is, and everything you write are implications. One thing I truly dislike as an academic, and also discourage as a teacher educator, is to look into dictionaries. I have to say to you that my primary education first was in language teaching and in arts and humanities. And when I then shifted to education, I was astonished that education would look at dictionaries. I have no idea where that habit comes from, but literally, if you were to quote Plato versus Webster dictionary, you would think that in the context of education, what would be valued is Plato, not what Webster says, right? So Webster is learning from us. We are not learning from Webster. Wikipedia doesn't even quote Webster, but if we, so what I'm saying is, I strongly discourage dictionaries, especially since I am not going to read those definitions which are backed up by dictionary references. They're not academic materials. They don't make you actually a graduate student. They don't teach you anything. So I'm not interested when students produce dictionary definitions, I basically don't see the work being done, right? So if all of your assignment is based on a dictionary, it will be a fail. So it's as clear as that. Even if it was correct, it's still a fail. Well, it won't be correct, but I'm just saying in principle, because what you need to do is to learn to work with the discipline materials, not with newspapers. So that, Shannon, you have written something, haven't you? You have probably sent it to me, and I probably said it was really good. But how many of you, Shannon, are you writing Australian curriculum, or were you using Australian curriculum? Yeah. What about Erin? Erin also is using Australian curriculum. Yeah. But unfortunately, some of students that are working with us, I mean, majority of students enrolled in this unit, or at least half, are in early childhood. So I might need to actually engage you in thinking about early childhood today. Would you be happy to do that, or would you want to do something else? One thing I want to, one thing I wanted to say, that there is no difference, despite of what seems on paper, there is no, structurally, there's no difference between early years framework and the curriculum. Yes, but I also think, Shannon, that there is no difference. One thing that I learned, and especially this is typical of in Australia, but I'm sure it's typical everywhere. But if we have a structure, say 1 to 3 points, being, belonging and becoming, or social capabilities, ethical and critical, they actually are mirroring each other. But for children and for people who work with children, you don't call it ethical intercultural, you don't call it social personal or whatever, you call it being. Then you call it becoming. Like, notice that the words are simpler, almost as if early years childhood teachers were simpler. Right? But they actually mean the same things. Yeah. Okay. So are you going, Erin, now, right? All right. So that's great. Shannon, are you happy to listen to this, or do I just simply record the podcast by myself explaining early childhood? And might just actually focus on your question. Okay, what about if I just focus on your questions, and I will record a podcast on early childhood separately today? Shannon, would you have some questions regarding anything? Would you have some questions regarding anything? I just have to close some, I can't close anything, I can't see things. Shannon, when it says reflections of your literacy knowledge, skills and needs. Okay. Yes, that's it. So so basically what happens is you've got your definition of literacy, right? And elaborated on it in relation to research, and maybe also if you were able to look, engage the discussions we had in our collaborate sessions. So that would be good. I have also produced some text commenting on other texts, but ignore it. I mean, if you can actually even engage our collaborate sessions and the critique of literacy tasks that I have produced, so that would be great for that first part of the assignment. Then you engage. So the idea really of assignment 1 is to ask you many questions, so that through different perspective I can see whether you control the concept of literacy. So assignments when they have so many criteria or so many questions to respond to, they are not, each of the questions is not as separate questions. What they are basically ways of testing how well you control the concept of literacy. So the definition, now can you engage it a little bit in your by discussing history as a student? Can you engage it a little bit by engaging the curriculum? Can you actually look at yourself and now link it, the concept of literacy with the curriculum? Then, and another one is, of course, can you summarize all of that? So what? So what have you learned from all of that? So you've done your activity, you've done your definition, you looked through the past. So what does this tell you now, right? So where to from here? Summarize it, give it a moral, produce some conclusions regarding where do you think pedagogy should go, if you can. If you can make some statements, that would be great. And obviously, the way we were working with the Australian curriculum and evaluating our literacy practice, and especially the way I was talking about it, well, you can see that typically literacy is seen as reading a text, right? And the problem with the concept of literacy as reading a text is that you actually, that reading a text already confines you, all your knowledge. It says to you that the meaning is in the text, right? So when we did the biblical analysis, when the student in on-campus class said, well, I read the Bible, and then she added to be like Christ, what we then did, we were evaluating her activity by looking at what she means by using the Bible in order to behave more like Christ or to be like Christ. So when we were doing the social capabilities and personal, but basically when we were looking at the range of text she was using, the kinds of, like the English part of it, which is the documents that she uses. So if it was just the Bible, she couldn't, and the Bible is an excellent example of actually how to read text. It was excellent because whether you read Quran or whether you read the Bible or any of those very old scripts, you know you cannot understand it. You always need some interpretative texts. But if it is also about the purpose of it is to become, to change yourself, to expand it, those texts, the range of texts that she was saying, the student was saying, cannot be just the Bible or interpretative text. Those texts have to talk to you through your body, through your rhythm. They have to change you. So you know how the Buddhists meditate and they have those songs and all of that. The same with psalms. They have a rhythm, and all of this is to actually not just talk to your logic, but also talk to your right brain and kind of like put your body in a different state, that you feel the awe. So when we were actually analyzing the documents, we have identified a lot of documents that actually she's reading. It wasn't just the Bible, it was actually a lot of documents in order to become like Christ, because the Bible alone wouldn't do the trick. So what happened now as a result was that in order to learn something, she had to read more, because by comparing and contrasting, which is what the right brain hemisphere wants you to do, it pushes you to exploration so that you actually can start devising increasingly more precise pictures or images of what that thing involves that you're doing, so that once you actually, your right brain is actually ready, it can start tapping this information to your left brain where all the systems get codified and you become a master of it, right? So exploration is something that is completely missing in the literature of education, which I don't understand why, because like hunger, sex, and play, exploration is one of the very few circuits that we have in our brain. And it, as I said before many times, if I remove most of your brain, provided that I would live, I don't know, whatever makes you breathe, you would be exploring things compulsively, except that you would not remember the solutions of those exploration, but you'd be running around the room all the time. And it makes sense because we need to explore in order to calibrate ourselves in space. My own definition actually of language is it's a tool for calibrating yourself in the world. You calibrate yourself with the smell, with all other senses, and language is part, in my view, it's another sense. Because when you talk, when people do something and you are not sure whether you should be laughing or not, the first thing you do, you look at other people, what they do, right, with your eyes, and you can even talk to them to clarify. It's a sense to clarify your own position. So the reason why I want students to actually integrate the literature, language, and literacy stream from the Australian curriculum, because the literature one forces you to examine what kinds of text do you need to actually explore in order to achieve the purpose of your literacy activity, which is, for example, to become like Christ. However, if you only had a literacy activity called I Read Bible, then we have nothing to evaluate. We thought, okay, read the Bible, whatever, right? There's nothing to evaluate. There's also nothing to teach. I want to learn to read the Bible. What does that mean? Right? There's no meaning to it. So that's why the purpose is important. And in order to actually reach the purpose or achieve the purpose, we need to explore documents. And exploration is one of those. So that will be the direction that pedagogy should take, which means to take a greater concern of the notion of exploration, not subject children to one caterpillar book and then read it. Well, if it is done in an average way, mediocre way, at least the teacher will somehow read it with students. If it is done really truly badly, which we will be learning for assignment 2, the teacher reads it to children. There's one principle in psychology that is very, very well applied, it would be very good to apply in one's life, but especially in schools. You should never do for students what they can do for themselves. Right, and there are ways 5-year-old who is pre-literate student can produce a complicated website in Chinese or in English, pick your language. We've got so many resources now online, they're so easily available, but we can actually do a lot of interesting things that we couldn't before. But the textbooks, current textbooks, are still written by, we still use in education textbooks written 20 years ago and just newer and newer editions of the same stuff. And even if they update references, they don't update ideas. Because updating ideas, it's really hard, and very often it would require rewriting the whole textbook. So yeah, the word exploration is hardly existing. Yes, we converse together in order to find each other's perspectives. What does it mean? What about if we are likely to have the same perspective? So that's why we had concepts like range, and then we had concepts. So first of all, you explore the range with it, and then you assess whether that range actually is useful in terms of your purpose. And you assess also the kind of ethical and cultural positions that this range actually helps you to interrogate, so that you can see what kind of population you're actually, or demographics of a community you actually your engagement in literacy activity actually represents. Are we having a monolithic, people think the same way, they look the same, they do the same things? And if it turns out this way, then you will know that one day when you are in school, you probably should do it differently. And in your assignment, it would be good if you said, well, I do things this way for whatever reason, but if, I can see the shortcomings of it, because if I did include larger text, more versatile text, and if I actually, when it says text in context, and if I reflected on what particular text is actually, how each of those different texts is helping me in achieving the purpose of the literacy activity, if I reflected on it, I might have actually included a greater range of texts, right? So why Psalms, the text in context, which is Australian curriculum requirements? Well, what role does Psalm have? to put you in a different state, poetic state, to feel Christ as opposed to understand Christ. Very different from reading some other texts, whatever they are. I'm not say even the Bible, but then parables. What parables are they? Narratives. Narratives are great. We love narratives because we actually create narratives of ourselves in our life. So Psalms, it is about the spiritual sort of experience. Narratives, it's about relating to our experience. And some other texts could be just, I don't know what are the other texts. I've never read the Bible. But the other texts would be probably just reading what happened, what actually happened. There are other things. There are series on YouTube. There's this guy, Jordan Peterson. We've spoken about him before. Jordan Peterson has an entire 15 series or 16 lecture series on the Bible, yet another way of looking at the Bible itself, now through psychology eyes. Right, so it's another experience altogether. It's an intellectual experience. It is spiritual, but not only, it's also intellectual. So you can see how, when you actually diversify the materials in relation to the role they play in regard to the purpose of your literacy activity, you increase the meaning of that literacy activity. It becomes literacy activity because you actually expand, you expand the text through which you understand your own engagement in the activity, why you're actually doing this, and whether you're doing it well. So these are the sort of things that would be great to see in reflections, rather than, oh, literacy have changed, now we have lots of technology and I will use ICT. I'm saying this because I used to get, usually when students think that the assignment is very easy, because students say, oh, it's just a portfolio, all I have to do is say what's literacy and then, I don't know, talk about myself as a student of literacy. What happens then, if you take it as a chatty assignment, you produce a chatty assignment, and then I can score you with a coffee. I can give you a coffee for it, but I can't give you a grade for it. So that's the difference between chatty assignment that belongs to a coffee club. But when you want to actually write an academic assignment, you've got to have some discipline, and through a definition. That's why the definition of literacy is extremely important, because the rest of the assignment tests your ability to control that definition. To control a definition or your concept means you can actually turn it around left and right and still see it. You know, like the Southern Cross. You know, if I twisted you and turned you around, you can still probably find it on the sky. Not so much the people who actually came from Japan, never saw it before. You show it to them once, they might find it, and then when you twist them around and you ask them to find it again, they can't see it, because they're not controlling actually the sky visually enough to actually find it. So yeah, so that's the assignment. I might, Shannon, just unless you have some questions, I will close it for today, and I will just produce a little podcast on early childhood, just to make sure that everybody. I think I produced something before, but I will just have a look what I've done before, and I will see how I should add to it or not. I'll just see, because we had this 2 weeks break, and I kind of forgot. I know that people think that I shouldn't forget, but you know, my life is extremely hectic and I've got so many responsibilities that once I put my head into one thing, then the other thing becomes fuzzy because I lose the detail of it. So I'll just have a look what I posted on the announcements for early childhood, and I might just add a bit more profound sort of part to it. All right, Shannon, all the best. I'll see you online, and I hope that I clarified your questions. Thank you so much.